That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, got a lot to talk about. Obviously, Alabama's going to be playing Georgia in the SEC Championship on Saturday. Certainly going to be the main topic of conversation today. Hopefully, we don't go 30 minutes long again with the whole playoff talk, even though there's playoff talk worth having, because on Tuesday night, the committee, I wouldn't say as expected, there were some signs that led us to believe that Alabama would be making a jump ahead of Notre Dame in the college football playoff rankings from number 10 to number 9. That ended up happening. To me, that was a huge statement by the committee because it pretty much, I wouldn't say guaranteed Alabama a spot in the college football playoff. Obviously, if they get blown out by Georgia, might not happen. But what it did do is it kind of put Alabama in the driver's seat where even if you suffer a loss against Georgia, you still have a very good chance of making the college football playoff. Way different than Alabama sitting at number 10. What were your thoughts on the committee electing to put Alabama ahead of Notre Dame on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I have a low confidence in the committee. I'm sort of a committee critic, uh, and have been most years. I feel like they have some wrongheaded thinking about some things, and I just didn't have a lot of confidence in them. But they did do what they should have done, probably from the initial ranking, which is put Alabama ahead of Notre Dame because the metrics sort of demand it. The only justification in ranking Notre Dame above Alabama was some sort of eye test that they might have been using. But I think what I'd underestimated, Clint, I think what made the difference is, committees, there's several people on the committee, and it's easy to imagine that the Notre Dame Alabama vote was close. Let's just hypothetically say it was 7-5, Notre Dame versus Alabama in terms of who should be ranked higher. So it wouldn't take much to flip that from 7-5 Notre Dame to 7-5 Alabama. And I think that's kind of what happened. For as hard as it is for me to believe that you could have Notre Dame ahead of Alabama, we need to remember that in the AP poll and the coaches poll, Notre Dame is ahead of Alabama in both. So it's obvious to national, people with a national perception that ranking Notre Dame ahead of Alabama isn't crazy. But they did flip it last night, and my guess is a couple people on the committee changed their minds after, and probably not wanting to put themselves in a position on Sunday to leave the loser of the SEC title game out, which would have caused, I think, a significant upheaval. And who knows what Greg Sankey might do if that ever happens. If the SEC loser of the SEC championship game's not in the playoff field, I think Sankey may go berserk. And, if you're on the committee, you don't want to see that.
Yeah, maybe it was just the fact that Yurachek was no longer distracted with a coaching search. Maybe he could actually put his focus towards ranking and watching football teams, and he figured out, wait a minute, I'm kidding, obviously, but the whole thing's crazy. I still don't think athletic directors should be on there. Has never made sense to me. There's going to be bias involved. There's going to be angling. Let's get ball knowers on there, and let's let them talk football and try to figure out who the 12 best teams are. Obviously, happy that Alabama jumped Notre Dame. I feel like that should have been the case all along. I understand that the timing of it is going to be strange to a lot of people because it's like, what did Alabama really do? They lost a close game, or excuse me, they won a close game against a 5-7 football team. There's all kinds of context around that needs to be added, but we won't. I mean, Bama fans who are watching this, they already know what that context is. Rivalry game. Auburn is better than their record would indicate. Very, very good defensively. Had figured some things out offensively without Hugh Freeze. We're calling better plays. We're getting better quarterback play. A lot involved there. Not going to dive into the weeds too much, but I think more so it wasn't what happened necessarily this weekend. It was all about justifying decisions that you make. They've been doing it all year. I mean, and they really for years. They make the decisions. They figure out ways to justify them, and they can look at Texas A&M loss, and that hurts Notre Dame, and this. You can go through and dive into the weeds all you want. The bottom line is they figured out with how we have things structured. We thought maybe an Ole Miss or an LSU would beat Oklahoma, or one of these teams ahead of Alabama would get knocked off. Everything would take care of itself, and it really was starting to not take care of itself. And so they realized while they were trying to put a buffer between Miami and Notre Dame, in my opinion, they realized what that was going to ultimately mean or could mean, and that was going to be a massive, massive problem. So they said, hey, What we can't do is let it get into the SEC championship game weekend or conference championship game weekend, have Alabama lose a football game, and then still move them up. We might not drop them down, but we can't move them up after they lose. So whoever is in that 10 spot is vulnerable if BYU beats Texas Tech. We've talked about it 100 times on this show. So that was Alabama. It had nothing to do with playing in the SEC championship, not playing in the SEC championship. It all had to do with being ranked number 10.
10.
If you got 3 teams coming in, you got 3 teams going out. The 3 teams going out is 12, 11, and 10. So I'm glad that they corrected that. It was the correct decision, in my opinion. And Alabama is in really good shape. But you got to beat Georgia this weekend if you want a chance at a first-round bye, or at bare minimum, you want a home playoff game. Either way, that is a much better situation to be in than having to go on the road and play somebody, even if it's Oklahoma and Norman or whoever. Not really what you want to do in the first round of the playoffs. Not get that bye week, not get that extra week to heal, and you have to add travel time and a hostile environment. These are things that you can avoid by simply getting a win over Georgia. And so hopefully Alabama is able to get that done. But let's talk about that matchup. And we'll start with Alabama's defense going against Georgia's offense. We know how it looked the first time around. Just what are some of your thoughts on this Alabama defense, how it's been playing, and maybe how it matches up a little bit against Georgia's offense?
Yeah, I think it matches up really well. And I'm expecting, sometimes when teams play for the second time, it looks radically different. I really don't think this will be radically different, especially in terms of outcome or score. And by outcome or score, I mean, I know we'll do a prediction at the end of the show, but what I mean is, Alabama won the first one, wasn't it like 24-20? I think it was the final score, 24-20 or 24-21.
21, yeah.
I think it's going to look like that. I think one team or the other is going to win by a very similar score. Alabama's second best defense in the SEC, in my opinion. Georgia is difficult to defend because they make you defend everything. And by that, I mean, there's nothing that Georgia really struggles with. Gunnar Stockton's a good quarterback. This guy's got a 20-5 touchdown interception ratio and has completed 70% of his passes and runs the ball 8 to 10 times a game, really, in terms of average, and make something happen with his legs. He's really tough to defend. He's a smart guy. He's tough as nails. He's tough. You listen to him in an interview and say, this guy's tough. But then you watch him play. He's tough as leather out there. Uh, I think a lot of Gunnar Stockton. He's good, and he can do it all. And they run the ball with Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens. Very productive in the run game. They can run it inside or out. Bowens is really good between the tackles. Nate Frazier can bounce outside. They've got tight ends that you have to defend. Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky are players that can hurt you as pass receivers. And then, of course, they have Zachariah Branch, outside, who's as good of a playmaking wide receiver as there is in the league. So you have to defend everything with them. Now, the good news for Alabama is Alabama's pretty good at defending everything. They're pretty good against the run. They're really good against the pass. I love Alabama's DBs in this matchup. I think the DBs are good enough, Clint, in man-to-man type stuff that maybe this is a game where you can free up the middle DBs into being a little more active as run defenders and see Bray Hubbard smashing heads. Well, not technically, because you don't want him out for targeting. I should use another phrase. Smashing pads with Bowens and Nate Frazier and get Bray Hubbard really involved in the run defense. Get Red Morgan at Husky, who's sort of becoming that full-time Husky. Get Red and Bray really involved in defending that run game. Whether you spy Gunnar Stockton or not, it's an interesting decision to make. He will hurt you with his legs. Don't know that you want to commit a defender to it, but that's an interesting decision. I think it's a really good matchup because I see Georgia having their successes, Georgia having their wins, Georgia having some success, Alabama not letting Georgia run away with the game. Alabama defense being too good to allow Georgia to get that blowout or to run it up. Alabama's defense just too good. Alabama's defense also healthy, not like the Alabama offense. Alabama defense pretty healthy. The normal guys, I expect to see them out there. and playing pretty well. So I like, Clint, in this game, Alabama's defense to hold Georgia. I'm going to say under 27, and that should give your offense a chance to win the game. That's all you're going to ask for here. I'm not going to ask the defense to hold Georgia to 10, to hold them to 13 or 14. They're capable because Alabama's defense is elite. But I think realistically, in terms of a realistic ask, is to keep them around what you did the first time. If you keep them around 21, maybe give up 24, you're giving your offense the opportunity to win the game. And then we'll see if the offense can do that.
Yeah, the first time around, Georgia uses 12 personnel a lot. I want to say like they're top 15 nationally and percentage of the time that they're going to be in 12 personnel. The first time around, Alabama matched, or they're going to most times match 12 personnel with 3-4 looks. Now, what's interesting, and I kind of brought this up, and I'm going to do it quick. Don't want to get tagged or anything like that as far as the copyright stuff, but I'm just bringing up this picture. We're not breaking down plays or anything. Just very quickly, this was the first snap of the game. They're in 3-4 personnel. I don't know if you can see it. I say 3-4. Right here off the line of scrimmage, Quay Russaw is actually playing kind of a strong side linebacker to the field side. When they go in these 3-4 looks, Russaw goes from being a weak side edge player to a strong side field side edge player, while Yanze Pierre was coming in as that weak side jack type of linebacker. So really, Quay kind of becomes that Sam linebacker, and Yanze comes in as the jack. Now, once Quay goes down in this game, when they started playing Justin Hill did replace Quay Russaw. They kept Yanze as that weak side player because the strong side player is more of the space guy. You can see that he's the one lining up off the ball here. And then also when you got to have one of these two guys line up in the apex or line up over a slot, typically you want the guy to the strong – you're going to have the guy that's lined up to the strong side of the field or the wide side of the field. He's going to be the one doing that. So the reason I say that is I did find it interesting because as Quay Russaw got injured against Georgia, the initial response was, okay, we're going to put Justin Hill out there, and we're going to have Yanze Pierre and Justin Hill – being kind of in those three, and I say 3-4 is 3-4 personnel. That's more of a 4-3 look, as you can see. But, when we go 3-4 personnel, Justin Hill will be out there. Well, then for a short period, maybe because he was young, he's inexperienced, he's a lot more experienced now, seen a lot more snaps. This was their first big college football game. I know Florida State definitely counts, but Georgia was like hostile environment, SEC game, a lot on the line. And so maybe with his inexperience, it seemed like there for a little while, they started to just say, we're just going to do our 4-2-5 base defense, even against 12 personnel. And I say 4-2-5, really it's a 3-3-5 if you want to get technical about the actual personnel that's on the field. But that linebacker can line up off, that Wolf can line up off the line of scrimmage, or he can line up on it. But then that didn't seem to last too long before they went back to kind of doing the 3-4 type of personnel against 12. What I love about this particular matchup is yes, Justin Hill is more experienced, but more importantly, it is that Yanze Pierre is way more experienced, way more confident, way more impactful, has got a great feel for playing and being relied on. I think that helps. I think Quay Russaw, hopefully, being available for the entire game when you do go 3-4 against 12, then I think that's really going to help as far as Alabama's ability to limit Georgia's offense. Not only that, but if you recall, Tim Keenan was coming back from an injury. That was his first game back, and I don't think he was 100% with that ankle injury. I think he had tightrope surgery, if I'm not mistaken. So Correct. He wasn't 100%, even though I do think he played pretty well in that game. I think he is playing really good football right now, and the fact that he is way past that injury, that's fantastic news. Edric Hill's playing better football. James Smith's playing good football. The second level, Deontay Lawson, was still getting his footing back under him. He's now, way closer to being the Deontay Lawson that we all saw last year and have kind of seen him become over his last couple of years. So I think really at all three levels, whether you're talking about the defensive front and the linebackers or even the secondary, who have, Dijon Lee has been kind of a solution, a lot more physical. What happened last time, they were able to isolate Damani Jackson and get some chunk runs.
They did.
You look at this situation, you say, okay, now they got Dijon Lee. Now you're going to see some Damani Jackson, I'm sure. He's been playing and he's been, performing pretty well. But kind of one of the things that helped Georgia generate quite a bit of an offense in the first matchup, Dijon Lee's now, he didn't play his best game against Auburn. Don't get me wrong, but he's still a much more physical presence. Should be able to wrap up those ball carriers a lot more consistently. And that should also help. So there are a lot of things. Georgia's made improvements as well, certainly. So this isn't just Alabama that has made strides, but where Alabama has made strides, I think can make a major impact in this game.
That's great points about, back about that time of the year, I was thinking Alabama's defense is really good. This is a good group. They're good. They have a chance to be elite. They became elite. And I agree, especially in this particular matchup and the personnel. And I love that breakdown of Georgia's in 12 personnel. They couldn't run the ball last year. They had a very difficult time running the football in 2024. They're running it pretty well in 2025. Not dominant, but I would say it's commitment and the 12 personnel. I mean, they're obviously committed to that. They have an athletic quarterback on top of it. That makes them very difficult to defend in terms of you've got to be physical up front, but be careful in the back end because Zachariah Branch, he can peel the top off, and that'll be that. But it's what makes them difficult to defend. When you have to defend the width and the length of the field, it sort of spreads you out. But at the same time, you got to be bunched up against them because they're going to come out in 12 personnel, and you got to match that. So how about Quay Russaw impactful against Auburn? Not just playing, but impactful. This is a good matchup for him, and you didn't get him the whole 60 minutes in Athens. Now you hopefully get him a full 60 minutes, and you don't have Yanze Pierre green. I mean, Justin Hill, you couldn't get any more green than him as a true freshman back in September, especially. But even Yanze was not nearly as experienced as he is now, as he became the full-time starter at Wolf after Quay Russaw was lost to injury. Now you've got Quay and Yanze both out there together, most likely in defending the 12 personnel packages. That's pretty exciting. Again, the health of the defense is pretty good. It's not like the offense. You're going to read a lot, folks, this week about how both teams are banged up. Totally true. But defensively, Alabama's in pretty good shape. And Deshaun Jones has been playing with a club type thing on his hand. I don't know that we'll see a lot of him, but Red Morgan's been playing really well in his spot, at Husky. But Hubbard, Sabb, the corners, all three of the inside linebackers appear in terms of what we hear and what we know and what we see. The defense looks pretty healthy. Again, I think Georgia's going to have a difficult time racking up points against Alabama. They will have their successes because they're too good not to. But I think overall, I expect the Alabama defense to give their offense a chance to win the game.
I do too. I really think Alabama's defense is going to be massive. It's going to have to be massive. And most Bama fans know that going in. We're not saying anything groundbreaking or anything like that. But I do feel like, granted, Georgia with its offensive line, Ernest Green, he was not, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he played against Alabama the first time around. He was definitely hurt.
He was definitely hurt. I don't remember if he played, but I remember him being hurt.
So when I say, that I don't think he played, like it's possible he played like maybe a few snaps, like they tried to get him in there, but I don't even think that was the case. I don't think he played a single snap. He's been back and he's averaged, over 60 snaps a game the last 5 games. So he's fully back into it. He's playing pretty good football. I really think he's helped stabilize that offensive line. People like Dontrell Glover or Glover, however you want to say it. Like, he's a lot more experienced. We talk about Justin Hill and him being a more experienced player now. Like, there are a lot of things that also help Georgia. But how Georgia won as far as the chunk runs and isolating that, boundary side corner in a lot of instances, I do think Alabama is better prepared to kind of handle that. Not only that, I think for a tackle to tackle, I think you're getting more production as far as the run stopping ability, second level, much more comfortable. Nakai Hill-Green, Justin Jefferson's playing really well. Deontay Lawson's really come on strong. So you've got like waves, and that's what makes the matchup all the more intriguing. Like, I think as far as Georgia's offense, they figured some things out as far as their run game. And Gunnar Stockton, prior to Georgia Tech, I thought he was playing really good football, so they're playing off of that well. it's going to be more of like a battle of the Titans. It feels like, where they're both a lot closer to being, full strength. Now, granted, Georgia's dealing with a center injury, just like Alabama is. We don't know if he's going to play. We don't know necessarily what adjustments Georgia's going to make if he doesn't play. But, that is going to be something to keep an eye on, because once again, Tim Keenan, very stout veteran presence who can cause a lot of problems for the opposing team's interior run game and really their interior offensive line in general. So it's not just the run game. It's how often is Gunnar Stockton going to have the ability to step up in the pocket and make throws when you've got Tim Keenan collapse in the pocket, maybe a London Simmons creating some havoc, James Smith, Edric Hill. Really like what they have as far as their interior defensive line rotation. And then as far as the twists and the stunts and doing all those things, getting Jan Zapier, being very creative in how you use him, like they did against Tennessee, where he applied a lot of pressure to Joey Aguilar, especially early. I would fully expect that to be kind of the game plan going in, and I think that really helps. But, one concern, so Georgia in the first matchup, they went for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and Bowens did average 9.9 yards per carry. A lot of chunks. Now, granted, Nate Frazier, he only got 4 carries in this game for 30 yards. He averaged 7.5 yards per carry, but one of those went for 24. So he had 124-yard chunk run, and otherwise he had 3 carries for 6 yards, which is only a 2-yard average. So he didn't, and he had the fumble, right? So that's something else that you got to worry about with him. If you're Georgia, is him putting the football on the ground. Alabama's been really good at getting the football out. And Bray Hubbard, I mean, just going back and watching the game against Georgia, how active he was. They kind of played him as a second-level linebacker in a lot of the, which they're going to do. You're going to walk safeties up and play him in the box.
Especially with the 12 personnel in their run game.
Exactly.
And Gunnar Stockton running the ball.
100%.
This is a Bray Hubbard up game.
That's right. I mean, I think that he is kind of going to be linebacker-esque here. And, I loved what I saw from him. He was very active, very aggressive, getting downhill, played extremely physical, obviously generated the turnover. Just think that he's played really good football pretty much for the entirety of the season since that Florida State game. But against Georgia, they really needed playmakers to step up, and he stepped up in a major way, really set the tone for Alabama defensively. I would fully expect that to continue, and hopefully Alabama can limit some of these chunk runs a little bit better, or a little bit more effectively than they did in the first matchup.
Yeah, we've said Alabama's improved. They've gone from a very good to an elite defense. It's got to start with defending the run. You can't let Chauncey Bowens average 9.9 yards a carry. And I wonder this. I wonder, Clint, if with Tim Keenan being healthier and they're losing their center, and very possibly, my understanding is probably plan B for them at center as a true freshman, probably. Now, they could also juggle guys around. That could happen too. But you wonder if they're like, gosh, Alabama, one of their best players is the nose guard. We're going to have a problem at center. You wonder if in their game planning, this is affecting the game plan significantly. We can't do what we want to do because we're going to have big trouble in the A gap this week. We're going to have to kind of forget that and concentrate our runs on B gap and outside stuff, because the A gap is just sort of dead to us this week. That's interesting if that's a conclusion that they reached based upon the health of their center. If their center's not playing as rumored, and we'll find out more as the week progresses. But you can't help but wonder if the whole game plan for Georgia kind of changes a little bit, because they would love to be physical up the middle. This is a physical football team. How about this? I was looking at their rush stats. One thing that just stood out to me, and I hardly ever notice this, but I did with them because the numbers are so crazy. But this is how good the Georgia offensive line is at run blocking. Both Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier have almost 0 negative rushes. I think for the year, Nate Frazier has lost about 5 yards in negative carries, and Chauncey Bowens about 8 or 9 yards. That's it. And they carry the ball like about between the two of them right around 25 times a week between the two of them. 25 carries a week, roughly. I might be wrong. Might be 23, but somewhere around that area. And between the two of them, they've only lost about 14 yards the whole year, that's great blocking. That means no contact in the backfield's happening. I mean, and they're good at running through contact because they're tough kids, but no contact in the backfield is happening. This is a good offensive line, especially when it comes to the run blocking. I do think Alabama's a better run defense than they were before. Plus, you have the Tim Keenan advantage in the A gap that you're going to have this weekend. So I don't think Georgia's going to have the success on the ground that they had the first time around. They might have more success in the air, but let's see who's playing at wide receiver. And boy, Xavier Brown coming off that great performance against Auburn, Dijon Lee playing more now than he did back then. That'll be a new matchup for Zachariah Branch because Dijon is so long and Zach, Branch isn't the biggest kid in the world. He might have some trouble with Dijon's length. I just think defensively, I just feel even better about this than I did the first time around. But at the same time, I think it's crazy to just predict that Georgia will score less than 21 or 24 points.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And what's crazy is that, just under 40% of Georgia's rushing yards in the first matchup came in the B gap. So either between the right guard and the right tackle or the left guard and the left tackle. They averaged 10.1 yards per carry attacking the B gaps. You look at their season average, and they're averaging like 5.2 yards per carry between the B gaps. So almost doubled that number against Alabama. That's pretty noteworthy to me. I mean, granted, some of that's, getting through the B gap and then isolating with a corner, Damani Jackson in particular, after. So, I mean, like, it's not like it's just first and second level. I think they were doing a really good job of creating situations where the cornerback needed to step up and fill, and you just weren't getting that from Damani Jackson. But at the same time, that's something to keep in mind when it comes to this Georgia offense that they were able to do the first time around. Now, granted, both teams are going to have different game plans. I think from a personnel standpoint, you really won't see any changes. I don't think they're going base, against 12 personnel as like the standard here, especially with Russaw back. And you finally actually get to have those two guys, him and Pierre, consistently on the field together. And that's with, like, at the time that was happening in the first matchup, to an extent, like, Pierre had about the same level of overall experience in his career as like a Justin Hill does now. Like, he hadn't played a ton of snaps last year. He hadn't played a ton of snaps. I mean, he had definitely contributed and rotated in. It was a nice part of the rotation, but that was the first like massive game for him where he, became that guy and everything. So it was like, I definitely think that is going to be something that Alabama continues to do. And you'll see the rotation. I thought, we talk a lot about, 12 personnel lends itself to running the football, 11 personnel, kind of more of your pass, but then doesn't mean that you can't run out of 11 or throw out of 12. In fact, I would say Georgia does a pretty good job of keeping you balanced with both. Both of their tight ends can be quality receivers. On top of that, there was some situations in that game I was going back and watching, and, Georgia starts getting into 11 to lighten Alabama's size defensively. You take one of those big Wolf linebackers, 245 pounds off the field. You put on, 190-pound Deshaun Jones at Husky, and it's like you say, okay, you get a lot lighter. And they were running the football out of 11 personnel and having some success doing that as well. So that's kind of the game plan for everybody, to mix things up, personnel packages, how you're attacking the defense, keep them on their heels. Nothing shocking, but, that is something where we need to understand Georgia's going to have they're probably going to hope that they can continue to run the football effectively, but they will probably do more like Gunnar Stockton, 20 pass attempts, completed 13 of them, 65% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, had 5 carries for 22 yards. Like, even back then, I don't think Stockton had the trust that he does now and the confidence that he does now. I think a bigger portion of this game is probably going to be put on his shoulders, and he's capable of responding. So what Alabama's got to be careful of is, if you allow them to have the same level of success on the ground or anything even remotely similar, understand they're also probably going to have a very strong complementary passing presence to that, and Gunnar Stockton's legs to that, that's really going to strain you defensively and could cause some massive problems.
Yeah, I would say, just in terms of, like, numbers, one thing I'm expecting, or a prediction I'll make here, is that Chauncey Bowens won't have quite the game this time around that he had against Alabama in round one. But conversely, Gunnar Stockton's probably going to have a little bit better day. I mean, he's more experienced, he's more confident. The Stockton to Branch hookup is a real thing. He's got those tight ends as great options for him. If that first read's not there, they're kind of, to me, second read, third read guys, but they'll make a play. I think Gunnar Stockton has a better day against Alabama than he did round one, but Chauncey Bowens isn't going to average close to 10 yards a carry. I'll be stunned if that happens again. But they had those great numbers that you brought up. They had such success in the B gap, and they don't want to attack the A gap, not this time around.
With a hurt center and Tim Keenan.
That's right. So I do think that them coming out as, okay, plan A, or I should say, plan number one, we're going to attack the B gap on these runs, because they didn't stop it the first time, and the A gap's stuff's not going to work. So I can kind of see that being their first idea, but overall, I do expect Gunnar Stockton to have a better day against Alabama. Georgia's secondary receivers outside of Zachariah Branch haven't been, there's no one other than Branch that is clearly a volume guy in terms of targets. I mean, it's Zachariah Branch by a mile in terms of his targets compared to everyone else. So that's the guy you got to cover. I don't think they're going to kill you with the other guys. They'll complete pass to him. I'll tell you a guy that they have that scares the heck out of me. And every time I watch Georgia and he makes a play, I can't believe they don't go to him more. And that's a Dylan Bell. I mean, he is he's a big receiver, sort of more like an H-back, in terms of how he's built. He's a matchup issue because, man, he'll truck a DB. I mean, he'll just truck a DB and he'll outrun linebackers. So Dylan Bell scares the heck out of me, but his overall numbers don't make you. I mean, I think he's got less than 300 yards receiving on the season. But gosh, it feels like when you watch him play, he could have 300 yards in a single night. But it just goes to show how, whether it's him or Cash Jones or Oscar Delp, they do have other guys that'll hurt you. It's not just Zachariah Branch, but Branch eats up a huge portion of their target share.
Yeah, I mean, in the first matchup, let me pull it up. Let's see. He did have that 43-yard carry, but he had 0 targets in the passing game in that first time around. Is that not surprising?
That's shocking when you look at. I think I want to say I totaled up that I think Georgia's second and third wide receivers they're going to play in this game together have less than half the catches Zachariah Branch has, half the receptions in 2025. So he is just by far their volume guy. The fact that he had no receptions against Alabama, A, it means Alabama did a great job, but B, Georgia's offense evolves. Your offense isn't the same. This isn't going to be the same Georgia offense that we saw in September. And again, I mean, I'll just, say that my first, bold prediction, less production from Chauncey Bowens, but probably expect a better, bigger performance from Gunnar Stockton.
What's interesting, and it's something that I noticed against Auburn, and I actually just went to look at the numbers. You look at a guy like, Dijon Lee, and granted, there were times where he's going to, it's been pretty even enough as far as splits between left and right corner. I mean, you've seen some where it was pretty lopsided, but a lot of games where it was even enough split. Against Eastern Illinois, he played 3 snaps at left corner and 8 snaps at right corner. So first of all, didn't play a ton, 14 total snaps, but those were when he was lined up, out wide. He was actually a bigger percentage of them came at right corner than left. But against Auburn, it was crazy. 75 snaps at left corner, 2 snaps at right corner. So as I was watching back the tape, yesterday, I was like, man, he is playing. It's not really now. Granted, a lot of those plays early on, I remember thinking like, why are they leaving him on the left side exclusively? And it was like a lot of the times that was the boundary side. So it's okay. Do they have him playing to the boundary still, or because they can switch it up? I mean, and they've said that it's matchup based. So, against certain teams, they might go where it's like mostly left versus, Xavier Brown playing mostly right. And then others, it's like they want to do boundary and field. So I was trying to figure that out. Is it because he's a true freshman and they want to get him comfortable playing just one, or was that Auburn specific? Because that is a crazy difference. He played 27 snaps in the Georgia game the last time. 20 of them came at left cornerback. 7 of them came at right cornerback. So while that is, a much higher percentage on the left side, I can chalk that up to just where the football was as far as which hash mark. And it just so happened that it was. But when it is 75-2, that is you going out of your way to saying we want him on the left side. And I don't know if that was because he's a freshman and you're trying to keep it simple, or if it was just something that you had specifically against Auburn. That's something that I'm going to be curious to see as well, because if he is strictly your boundary corner, in a lot of those instances, if I recall correctly, Damani was playing to the boundary, and that's how they were isolating him on some of those chunk runs. So will it be Dijon being asked to do that all the time in this game, or most of the time in this game, or is it a situation where it doesn't matter, you're doing left and right, and there's going to be plenty of times where Xavier Brown is playing to the boundary? He just played his best football game, in my opinion, against Auburn. I think he plays extremely physical. He will mix things up in the run game on screens. So, I kind of like the idea of him being the more steady presence where you've got him playing to the boundary some, but either way, both corners are going to have to be physical and come up and actually get into the run fits, because Georgia's going to design things where they have to sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you're probably better off this time. I mean, I don't think it's the reason that they made the change of going from primarily Damani to primarily Dijon, but there's no doubt it's helped with the run defense. And now if Georgia wants to attack a corner, with their run game, if you're Alabama, you feel pretty good about whether it's Dijon or Xavier Brown, because boy, Xavier made at least one that just immediately comes to mind, a run stop against Auburn that just had NFL written all over it. Like, man, that kid is so good. But it is interesting, when you're the team that loses in game one, I think there's a tendency to say, okay, that didn't work. Let's do something else entirely. I don't know if that's the right decision here for Georgia. I don't think either team, I'll end with this as far as Georgia's offense, I don't think either team will mind playing quarters 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the first game, because it could have gone either way so easily for either team. I don't think Alabama or Georgia will object to basically what amounts to a continuation of the first game. I think Alabama's got to feel, if this one goes like the first one did, we'll take it. And Georgia's got to feel, hey, if it goes like the first one did, we're going to take it because we're just one play away. This time, this game will make the play in the fourth quarter. That's the difference. Last time we didn't, Alabama did. This time we will. I don't think Georgia is just going to take their game plan from September and trash it. I think they're just going to try to improve it. But I don't expect to see something radically different from Georgia. I think Georgia just wants to execute better than they did the first time.
Well, it's an interesting dynamic with the College Football Playoff Committee putting Alabama number 9, feeling pretty confident that you're going to get in regardless. We were talking about Georgia and having that quote unquote mulligan where you can technically lose this football game. Now, granted, the difference before was, okay, but if we beat Alabama and we go ahead and put them away, we don't have to play them a third time. They might not end up in the college football playoff. Now it's like, it doesn't matter whether we win this game or lose. We're probably going to, we're both probably getting in. It's possible that we end up seeing each other for a third time. There's some down the road mental gymnastics happening on that front. Same thing with Alabama to an extent, where it's like, okay, now that you kind of don't have to have this, I mean, are you giving Georgia? Are you giving everybody because this coaching staff, when they felt very in control, they've seemed to take their foot off the gas. Like from a preparation standpoint, I think they've done a little bit better of a job this year as far as being prepared enough to win a lot of these football games. You just got a much better clutch factor than you did a year ago. But I also think that they still kind of play to the level of their opponent, and they just figure out a way to win no matter who they're going against. And it's like this against Georgia, they came out swinging early. Good game plan, seemed very in control to start that football game. Ended up going into halftime, I want to say, with a 10-point lead. It was like 24-14, if I'm not mistaken. What's wild is that there were 7 total points scored in the second half of the first game, and that came from Georgia. The first half, it started off, Alabama was leading 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. There was 31 total points scored in the second quarter, 17 by Alabama, 14 by Georgia, and then you had 7 points total scored in the second half. Both defenses adjusted well. Now, Georgia had some opportunities. They went for it on fourth down there on the goal line, didn't get it, or near the goal line, within 10 yards, didn't get it. That's points that you could have had that you ended up not capitalizing on, and Alabama took over the football. So I'm not saying that they weren't in a position to score more points, but only 7 points in the second half. I do think both Georgia's offense and Alabama's offense probably going to be looking at, okay, we did some really good things in the first matchup, especially in that second quarter. How do we build off of that? Do you have anything else on Georgia's offense versus Alabama's defense before we get to the next?
Like I said about Georgia wanting the same 4 quarters played over again, so much of that game came down to that one play. That fourth down play where they go to Cash Jones, which is, controversial. LT Overton makes the play on fourth down that pretty much wins the game for Alabama. He made it about like a hand. He got like a hand on him.
Shoestring.
It was a shoestring type tackle. He doesn't make that tackle. Georgia converts there. Georgia probably wins the football game. And that's why I'm saying I don't think Georgia's just going to trash what they did the first time around. That's what typically happens in these matchups. When you lose the first time, you go, okay, that game plan didn't work. Delete. And you come up with an all new one. No. I think Georgia's like, hey, this time Cash Jones going to make LT Overton miss and we win the game. And they're comfortable doing what they did the first time. I think Alabama largely will be too, but like you said, maybe an emphasis on what happened in that second quarter, because offensively, Alabama didn't get much done in that second half against Georgia.
Yeah, it's been a problem for them all year. They found ways to make plays at the end of games when they needed to, particularly against Auburn, obviously. But I don't know. There are some concerns, and we're going to be talking about them on the other side of the football. So that's going to be coming up. Good conversation, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. Get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order, and we will talk to you guys soon.